Look at us. All right, very good. I will call to order the Railroad Transportation Safety District meeting for March 5th, 2024. Get to the right sheet here. This meeting of the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District, commonly referred to as the RTSD, is subject to and adheres to the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection and is posted by the entrance to this room. The RTSD agenda for today's meeting was posted on the RTSD website on February 28, 2024. The RTSD website is also accessible by links from both the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County's official government sites. Okay, the date's still November 28th here. In addition, on November 28, 2024, the meeting agenda was posted. February. Okay, in addition, on February 28, 2024, the meeting agenda was posted on the bulletin boards located in City Hall, first floor, 555 South 10th Street. A copy of the agenda is also available at the entrance to this room. One copy of the meeting agenda and all materials being considered today are located at the dais, and complete copies of these materials are on file at the RTSD office at 949 West Bond Street, Suite 200. Would you do a roll call this morning, Mary?
Yes. Edmondson?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Schulte?
Yep.
And Vest.
Here. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, approval of minutes.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Second?
Motion by Schulte, second by Carlson. Please call the roll.
Okay. Bowers?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Schulte?
Yes.
Vest.
Yes.
Edmondson?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item number 4 is the report of statement of financial activity. Mr. Nelson.
Good morning, Kevin Nelson, Lancaster County Budget and Fiscal. Attached to the agenda was the statement of financial activity as of February 16th, 2024. On that statement of financial activity, you'll see that total receipts for the year amounted to just a little over $4.5 million. We're right at 50% collected. Obviously, the month of March will probably be a big month for the collection of the rest of the property taxes, and so we're right on schedule for being able to hit that budget amount of revenues there. On the disbursement side, through February 16th, we've dispersed just shy of $260,000, or 7% of our budget. What it is looking like now is we're probably not going to hit that budgeted expense, just due to the timing of especially projects related to the 33rd and Cornhusker. I know Roger's going to talk a little bit more about that later today when we get into some of the projected budget numbers for next year of some of the timing of that, but it does look like that from an expenditure side we will be under budget this year. As far as our cash and investments as of the 16th of February, at that point in time we had just a little over $730,000 in our cash balance, and we had $30.6 million in our investment balances that included CDs and money markets. And I know, as all of you are aware, I'll just state it again for the record, with the projects that we have planned for the future, including 33rd and Cornhusker, this board has made a decision to basically put aside some money each year for those upcoming large capital projects. And so that is why we have that nearly $31 million balance in our investments. Since our last meeting, we did have about $625,000 of CDs that matured. Those CDs were invested at 4.5% and 4.1%. We took that $625,000 of CDs that had been renewed. We added about $1.25 million to that, and we've reinvested that now at 5 and 5.5%. So we're still doing a good job there. Our county treasurer continues to do a great job of getting us the highest possible interest rate we can on these new investments. And so as we have excess cash available and as other CDs are coming due, we're getting those reinvested and usually at higher interest rates. Roger and I did meet with the county treasurer's office last week regarding some other investment opportunities, and it does appear like we've maybe hit kind of the peak of where those interest rates might be. And so with that in mind, we have gone ahead and done a few things to try to get more things invested now so that we can capitalize on that interest rate where it is right now. So of the 700 and some thousand that you're seeing in the cash balance as of February 16th, we did invest 600,000 of that into CDs, and then we just recently moved 750,000 out of the money markets into another CD, trying to just capitalize on where we're at on our interest rates. So with that, does anybody have any questions on the statement of financial activity?
Any questions for Kevin? And then, just to clarify, Roger, do we need to receive this report, or do we need action?
I move that we accept this report.
Okay.
Second?
Motion by Amundson, second by Carlson. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Carlson,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 5, and Roger, we discussed doing item 5 and 6 together. Is that agreeable to you?
Absolutely. It's all about the budget and CIP. So Kevin kind of give you a report. Obviously, we're doing fairly well. I don't have any concerns in the existing budget. Attached with the agenda was an operating budget, and also with that is a CIP. Just for folks that are looking in, our 24 budget is the second column from the right. At the March meeting, we always try to prepare a draft or a proposed budget for consideration and approval at the June meeting. So the far right column would show what we're proposing, trying to keep things pretty much the same. There's a $3,000 proposed increase for superintendent services. That's simply inflation in what the RTSD is paying the city for those management. Operating budget this year would be is just a little over 228,000. Next year proposed 266, but most of that increase is an increase in the service charge that the treasurer's office is entitled to by state statute for the money coming in, and it's a set percent, and if there's more revenue, then their commissions go up. So we're trying to make sure that we're accurately or better showing what goes to the treasurer. And I would echo what Kevin said. County treasurer, I think, is being very diligent and mindful of managing the RTSD and the taxpayers' money.
Is that the it's commissions?
Yes.
Line on the budget, Roger, that went from 116,000 to 150,000.
Yes.
So that's the lion's share
Yeah.
of the increase.
You want me to clarify something on that, Roger?
Sure.
If you look at our actual expenditures through the 16th of February, we've got 71,000 already in that, and that number's probably going to double when we get the March stuff in. So the amount that we budgeted for 2024 is probably actually low.
Okay.
So that's why you're seeing a bigger increase there.
And if we think, if we have better numbers, we can revise that number when we come back in June with a report for the board as well.
Okay.
Okay?
We have funds available to cover that increase on that line?
Yes.
They take their share off the top when it comes in, right off the bat. So, and again, that's a state statute requirement for them providing the treasurer. In the lower portion, under construction projects, we really haven't spent any crossing money. Would propose to budget the 250 and 50 for a total of 300 for crossings. I kept the proposed miscellaneous engineering and emergency and safety at 300 and 200. The budget for 33rd and Cornhusker expected next year, 4.2 million. We had budgeted 2.7 this year, but we're probably going to spend less than 400,000 as the environmental document did not get over to FHWA, and moving in process to spend more of those pre-design monies and moving ahead. So
Did it not get moved over because it wasn't ready, or why did it not get moved over?
review after review after review and comment and getting it acceptable to NDOT and FHWA to be submitted.
So we'll move over, we spent 400,000, we'll be able to move that balance over to
Yes, so
or two.
the other attachment that I put in there is our 12-year CIP that we typically have, and I've not moved this year over to the left. So you'll notice under 23, 24 in that column, where we had budgeted 2.7, we're estimating we're only going to spend 375,000. So then we've sat down and looked and tried to estimate how the cash flow will go for the continuation of that project. So because we're not moving as quickly as we had hoped with the environmental document, we can't start pre-design. We couldn't even look at potential of early right-of-way acquisition. In 24-25, we had proposed 10.2 million. We won't be ready to do that. So we've adjusted, to the best of our knowledge now, the cash flow and expenditures on that project. So, and then I would want to remind everyone that just because we budgeted 2.7, anything not spent stays in the cash account or in the investments. That money is not lost. It's still there for their use. So that's kind of where we are. And at this point, I always ask the board if you're thinking about other activities or efforts that you're aware of for a budget now, between now and June is the time to think about that. A little later in the meeting today, Lincoln Parks will be here today to talk a little bit about an impending trails project and a future trails project that they would be probably looking for some financial support. And we can talk a little bit more about how that might affect this draft budget after that discussion. So again, that is a draft budget, and currently the current budget is running well. I'd answer any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions for Roger on the budget, this year's or the proposed?
And these are just reports. There isn't any action required today.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 7, consideration of audit and contract budget. And this is something that we've had some discussions on, Roger.
Okay, Tony Jurina of HBE is here today. I want to make sure the board understands we have, actually there's 2 separate documents in here. They're both letters of engagement proposed for HBE to do the annual audit for the year that would be ending June 30, and to prepare a budget for 24-25 that then would go to the state auditor. And I would have Tony come up and go through it a little bit. I would like to make just a couple of comments. HBE has a long history of working for the RTSD very well, clear back in the day when the original partners were Niesick and Crouch. I've kind of grown up with them. Since those consolidations have happened, HBE has continued to provide audit and budget services and done very well for us. And we're pleased that they're willing to continue that activity. And I'll let you take it from there if you would, Tony.
Good morning. Here to present our proposal for audit and budget services. We needed to give you two engagements because nowadays we need to have an engagement for everything, different letter for everything. So one is for the budget, one is for the audit services, but we will build them together under a basic fee of $17,250. What we will do with our audit is audit your records, and at the end of the audit, we will also provide adjusting or correcting entries if there are any, and we will also draft the financial statements for you, and then upon your approval, we will give them back to you for your final approval. When we are out auditing, usually we start in late July or August. I think it's about that time. And while our auditors are working with your books, I am also working with Roger and you on the budget. So obviously the budget will be probably in your hands 1st of September, or by that, at least before the September board meeting. And the audit maybe have a draft, but you'll definitely have a final or a final budgeted financial statement or audit financial statement by your December meeting. I don't think we've ever, I think last time we had a final as of last December. So that is it. Our services really will not differ from what we did last year. We still have the same crew, thank God, because they come and go. I'm about the only one that's been around since I remember the vault downstairs. They used to have property tax receipts. I used to go down there and take a look at those and record all that stuff. So it's a little bit easier now. But this is what we are proposing, and I would be happy to answer any questions you would have.
Right. We've had some discussions, and I mean, we're open here if we have any questions or concerns about looking at other entities to perform these tasks. And I know, Kevin, were you involved in any of those discussions about options?
Yeah, Dennis and I have had some conversations about, and then Roger and I have had conversations as well about audit firms and that kind of stuff. And if you look at the audit landscape over the last 10 years or so, there's a lot less firms in Lincoln that are doing these kinds of audits now than were 10 years ago. 2 audit firms that I used to work for prior to getting into government, in all reality, those 2 auditing firms don't even exist anymore, and they used to do some of these types of audits. So the number of firms out there have dwindled significantly from where we were 10 years ago. HBE, I feel, has done a fantastic job with her audit. One of the things that I really appreciate is the timing of when they do their audit. As Tony said, he's here doing that audit in July and August, which really works out well because those of us that are kind of having to work with them on the audit, it's usually Amy Wilson and myself, that's a good time of year for us to be working on the RTSD stuff, because once we get into about September, October, we really start gearing up then on the county audit and the PBC and the JPA audit. So being able to get this one out of the way in July and August really does help us out a lot from a time crunch scenario.
That's not dependent on who the firm is, correct?
It's sometimes when you get some new auditors in, they kind of dictate to you when they're going to do the audit. They've got technically till the end of December to do that audit. It's all going to be on when they've got the schedule to be able to do it. So, and right now, since the long relationship we have with HBE, they just kind of have us penciled in right now in that July and August time frame.
Any questions for Kevin or Tony? Matt, anything?
I guess I would just say the same thing I said last year. When we've done the same thing for 20 plus years, we probably need to reconsider it every once in a while. And so opening it up and allowing another firm to bid it, I think is a good idea. I understand we're at a place right now where we need to do it for this year, so I'll be supportive of this year, but I really would prefer that we open it up and allow, while there may be less firms, that doesn't mean there's not a firm that's willing to bid it. And I think we could potentially save some money. We could potentially find out that this is our best option, but by not having an open and transparent bidding process, we limit ourselves on that, so.
Okay.
Well, I actually really do think that, I've been on the RTS board for some time, and I think that you have done a very fair job in presenting all the information. So I would echo what Roger has said. We have a good, long relationship with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a lot newer to the RTSD board, but I'm really impressed with the report on the quality control of HBE, and I feel, that continuing this relationship is a responsible move for the taxpayers. And I just want to note that while I'm new, I'm really impressed.
We have to have a peer review every 3 years, and we have been, the letters they issue have not really changed at all.
Yep.
Okay. Real good.
I just got a couple. I got a few questions. How long has HPE been around for?
Well, HBE, I'd probably say at least 30 years in one form or another. They used to have an office over by the Laszlo South building. I think they used to be downtown even a long, long time ago. I came here in 2014 or 15 or so. The RTSD actually was an audit of my old firm, which was called Miesick and Crouch. Even before that, it was called Eberei and Associates. So we've been around a long time with the RTSD.
So even as like other firms are kind of shutting down, HPE has been around for a long time and has been strong and is respected in the community.
A lot of smaller firms that recently have need to dispose of their governmental clients because they're difficult. There's a lot of compliance issues. They have lots of funds and things like that, and they don't have the people power anymore to provide all these audit services. So, but HBE, that is one area that we have a specific building for now, and you know, we're up on the regs and everything. So, you know, we've been doing a good job in that area.
What makes government auditing different than, you know, a traditional audit or another kind of audit?
Because you have different guidelines issued by the Government Accounting Standards Board. So it's not just, we cannot just follow GAAP and the rules of the AICPA and things such as that. We also got another level, and it's the government accounting standards that we have to abide by. They dictate, obviously, the format of the financial statements and such. So there is more detail that we have to deal with.
Do you think that people tend to underestimate the complexity of a government audit?
I think a lot of people do not know what goes into a governmental audit. So they think, oh, you know, the bank balances and we're done, you know, and then put out a report. It's not like that anymore. We have to go through different stages of planning, risk assessment, and how we assign that risk assessment to your financial statements as opposed to somebody else's financial statements. So there are different steps that we have to follow even before we can put out a draft of a financial statement.
So, I mean, it sounds like the fact that you've all been around for a long time, you all have a proven record, and the fact that you understand government accounting, it seems like the responsible decision as opposed to if Brody and I opened up an accounting firm and said, we'll do it for, you know, 50% less, right? Another thing I want to ask is, you also do audits of nonprofits, right?
We do quite a bit of nonprofits, yes.
And like varying sizes and different.
We got a couple worldwide.
I didn't know that.
Yes, we do a few of those. A couple of them, I'm sure. But then we do, would be 75, at least, 75, 100 nonprofit engagements, either reviews or audits.
So nonprofits that rely on having a solid audit for their grant funding and for federal dollars will often reach out to you to handle their audits to make sure that they're in
Yes,
compliance.
especially when we get into the single audit area, when you have expenditures, federal expenditures of $750,000 or more. And that's another level of auditing. It's called, we still call it a single audit, but it's a huge leap up from governmental accounting, and I'm glad you don't have that. And it's a huge increase in the fee also. So,
Well, you know, based on what you said, as someone who really values transparency and accountability, I feel like with the audits that you provide, they've been transparent, and the fact that you have a good reputation and you've provided good services not only to the government or, you know, to government systems, but to worldwide nonprofits, you seem pretty accountable. So I'm going to vote in favor.
we have some good team members. One of our main guys, who was the lead in charge of that audit, was Lucas, and he came from the state of Nebraska auditor's office, so he knows quite a bit, and we got a lot of others they're doing a good job. So,
Well, thank you for taking us on, because I know that government audits probably are not an easy task to do, and you probably would make more money and have an easier
I prefer helping Roger do the budget.
And actually, $17,500 is quite reasonable for those services.
I think it's about an 8% increase or so. I think right now this audit did not make 100% realization. Most governments don't. I think it was around 80% realization. So we can't bill out everything we put in. Fortunately for you, I mean, there's some other governmental audits out there that were coming in at 50, 60% realization. So it's tough to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, James. Thank you, Brody. Good discussion. If there's no other discussion, we would need a motion
I'll make the motion.
to approve the contracts.
Yep.
And I'm
Second.
assuming that's both, right? Budget and audit. Thank you.
Second.
Yeah, very good. We have a motion by James Michael Bowers, second by Brody Weber. Any further discussion? Good points. Thank you all. Please call the roll.
Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yep.
Best,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes,
Bowers,
Yes.
and Carlson.
Yes.
Motion to approve the contract carries 6-0. I guess, Tony, it's not as easy as you make it look, so I'm glad we got you on board. Thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 8, consideration of a legal contract. Was it okay if we just go without a legal contract this year, Roger? We just skip a year? Do we need a legal contract every year is, I guess, my question.
I think we need a legal contract every year, and
I was
if
afraid you were gonna say
choose
that.
to not do that, I might tender my resignation as well. but-
Oh, we can't
No.
have that. That ain't gonna work.
So that's not a threat, that's just me worrying. So yes, and William Bill Kudelek from Crosby Gunzel is here to talk a little bit again. We're proposing the continuation. I would remind the public that's listening, Crosby Gunzel drafted the initial legislation that allowed the creation of an RTSD in state statute by the state years and years ago, and has been a constant supporter throughout. Bill will say these rates are the same as last year, and they are a significantly discounted hourly rate over typical legal fees, I think. But
I was looking at the legal fees.
and again, I would say it is a privilege and a pleasure to work with Crosby Gunzel and Mr. Kudelek. He is responsive to my questions, my needs. I sometimes feel like maybe I'm his only client when I call, but he treats me that way. And the office is very responsive and has taken care of legal issues and is very consistent in the review, the preparation of, and giving legal advice and direction. So with that,
Good morning. Bill Kudelek, Crosby Gunzel Law Firm, 134 South 13th Street. Crosby Gunzel has been in existence since 1948, so we celebrated our 75th anniversary recently. I've been at that firm for 25 of those 75 years or plus, and have a firm of several attorneys there. I'm principally over the last several years been the main person that's handled RTSD business, but on occasion one of my partners might step in. Typically, most recently, Rich Rice. Like Roger indicated, it's been a privilege to work with the board and Roger through the last fiscal year, and this contract is a renewal of that under the same terms. Obligated to come to the meetings, whether they're the 4 regular or any special meetings, and then it's kind of on an as-needed basis, based upon those rates that are set forth in the contract. Again, appreciate the privilege to represent you, and any questions for me?
I would just start by adding that Roger's correct in that Bill is always there when we need him, and we get very timely responses, and I can even understand what he's talking about, which I really appreciate, Bill, because that's not always true when dealing with attorneys, but very, very good service, and we've been well served. So any other questions or comments for Bill? All right, then I would entertain a motion.
I would
of
move
this
that we
contract.
continue the legal contract.
Second?
We have a motion by Admonson, second by Carlson to approve the legal contract, since we are going to have representation for this year. Please call the roll.
Schulte,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes,
Bowers? Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
and Weber.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm going to stay up here for the next item.
All right, we will move on to item number 9, consideration of a resolution to reimburse railroads and road authorities for crossing.
Okay. On occasion, on an as-needed basis, Roger calls me about certain questions that might come up, and one of those issues since the last meeting that has come up was the ability for the RTSD to reimburse road authorities that have been involved in some of the work involved in maintenance of some of those crossings. And 10-plus years ago, this board authorized the executive director to simply reimburse the railroad authorities for expenses incurred in railroad crossings. When you have a board that only meets 4 times, sometimes inefficiencies arise, and the ability to turn those funds over more quickly was desired by the board. And so resolution in 2010, resolution 10-7, this board authorized the executive director to reimburse the railroad authorities for expenses incurred as long as they're within budget. And what this resolution 24, proposed resolution 24-07 does is expand that authority not only to the railroad authorities, but to the road authorities, because the road authorities also incurred expenses as well. He asked me the question if he could pay the city or the county. I can't remember which road authority it was, and I told him, let's look at the resolution, and the answer was no. And so if this board still wishes to authorize the executive director to facilitate the quicker reimbursements of expenses for railroad crossing maintenance, not only to the railroads as it exists right now, but also to the road authorities, then I think through this resolution, that's what is necessary.
This resolution just adds to the authority we've previously given Roger, not just to the railroads, but to the road authorities, which would be the city of Lincoln or the Lancaster County.
Correct. Still has the obligation to maintain within budget constraints. Yes. So if there was anything beyond budget constraints, he would come back to the board through a regular special meeting and seek additional approval.
I think I know the answer to this one, Bill, but that would include like village or cities like Waverly or Hickman, if they incurred expenses, would they be a part of this?
Only if they are the road authority. And Roger, would there be a position where any of those city or villages would be part of a road authority for a railroad maintenance crossing? The answer is yes.
Okay, real good. Well, I'm definitely okay with the county getting reimbursed, so. Any questions about this resolution? I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve the resolution.
Second?
Motion by Adamson, second by Carlson to change this regulation to add road authorities under Rogers' authority. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Best,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes?
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
and Schulte.
Yep.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Bill. Item number 10, Roger.
Yes. Consistent with past practice, Nebraska section of Operation Lifesaver, which is an organization that promotes safety, stop, look, listen, and live. They work really hard with the DOTs, the county sheriffs, the police department across the state, and education. They try to be at all the state fairs. They try to get into schools, helping new drivers and students to understand the conflict between pedestrians, bicyclists, cars, and trains. I attend a regular monthly meeting with Operation Lifesaver. This board has done a proclamation every year supporting the activities of Operation Lifesaver. In the past, we had received a request for funding support of $300 from Operation Lifesaver. I had hoped to have a representative here today, but they were busy doing some other things. The documentation that we received, and that was the attachment, they've changed their process slightly in support, where you can now choose different levels of support, whether you want to be bronze, silver, gold, or platinum, or some other amount. I'm here to say that I sincerely appreciate their support, and providing some operational support for them like we have in the past is beneficial, I think, to me and to the community. But would leave it up to the board to decide whether or not to contribute, and if so, perhaps at what level.
And I would just call attention to Roger's pin there. That is the official Operation Lifesaver lapel pin. I was a member of Operation Lifesaver when I was employed by BNSF Railway Company, and very dedicated group of volunteers that give their time to help people be aware of the risks involved with railroad crossings. And a lot of folks get an education that's very helpful in protecting them and railroad employees from having to witness terrible tragedies. So I guess we should have a discussion. We have supported 300 in the past, but there's
Well,
options.
Yeah, actually, I would simply say that, having taught in Columbus for, Columbus, Nebraska for 10 years, and having lived close to the railroad tracks, I'm familiar with the accidents that have happened, and I'll never forget one tragic accident that happened. It was on the night of the junior-senior prom, and a group of 4 kids were killed by a train. I'm absolutely in favor of Operation Lifesaver. It does a tremendous job, and I think that $300 is actually really, it's a level that is significant, but I think that, as time goes by, we've done that for some time. I would like it to be moved up to 500 at least.
I mean, we're close to gold here, folks, if we can just find another $500, but anyone else have thoughts?
Is there any interest in going to 1,000?
I'd go to 1,000.
I just add, this seems to be, and sorry to interrupt you there, James.
No, please do. It stops me from saying dumb things.
To me, this gets to the core about what we're about and what we do.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to go to 1,000.
Okay.
The group obviously has a long history of doing good things in the area, and would certainly be supportive of that.
Okay.
Would you be willing to make a motion?
Yes, and to that tune, I'd be willing to make a motion to increase our support to $1,000.
And I'll second that.
I deeply appreciate that. We have a motion by Carlson, second by Admonson. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yes.
and Best.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thank you, everyone. That's money well spent.
Thank you.
Item number 11, report of projects and crossing updates. Item A, 11A
We have
is
an update on 33rd and Cornhusker from our project manager, Kristen Humphrey.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Chris Humphrey, RTSD Project Manager for the North 33rd and Cornhusker project. And I think the last time we were together, we had just gotten a draft copy of the environmental document, the environmental assessment. Since that time, the RTSD has reviewed it, the Nebraska Department of Transportation has reviewed it, and then comments were made on that iteration, and it was submitted to FHWA in mid-February. So right now, we are currently waiting any day to get comments back from Federal Highway Administration, and then Olson, our consultant, will be busy incorporating those comments. It'll go back through a review with the state, resubmittal with FHWA, and then when everybody's fine with it, then we can move forward with the public hearing. So fingers crossed, May, June timeframe, we'll be having a public hearing on the environmental document for that project, and then we can move on to addressing public comments, and then wrapping up that final version of that document and decision document from Federal Highway Administration. So that's really good news. The project's moving forward. After the environmental document's complete, we'll be able to move forward into final design, right-of-way acquisition, and ultimately construction then. We're still continuing coordinating with the Corps of Engineers and the Lower Platte South NRD with the Dead Man's Run project. And then we did recently find out that the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant, which is the grant that we went after in late 2022, the next round of that is expected to come out in May of 2024. So we will be waiting for that opportunity of funding notice to come out, and we'll be planning on resubmitting that as well.
And we did do some follow-up from the first time, is that correct, Chris?
Yes,
That
we did have a debriefing with them on that, and got their comments relating back to what we can incorporate into this next round. Just kind of identifying a little bit more, being more clear on where the funding would be coming from, and we plan on incorporating all that back into the next round.
Okay, all right. That's really a game changer if we can be successful there. Appreciate your ongoing efforts. Any questions for Chris? You know, this is a long project.
It's always waiting.
Yeah, but
Yes,
I
yes,
keep
a lot
hearing
of wait,
construct.
yeah. But after we get the environmental document, we will be sprinting down to the finish line for final design. So
Okay.
it'll be moving a lot faster after that.
All right,
Probably won't be done by the time I'm off the board, though.
Art, the review of the review.
We will accept any challenge, so, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Item B, Southeast Lincoln Quiet Zone.
Mark Meisinger of FHU is here to give us kind of an update and a status on that project. I do have a handout with meeting notes that kind of show the current status and the stuff that Mark is going to go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Mark Meisinger, Felsberg, Holton, Olivig, 200 South 21st Street, Suite 250 in Lincoln. As Roger mentioned, prepared a little bit of an outline, asked me to make a few brief remarks, so want to give a quick project recap that, we initiated the project in April of 2021. It's a quiet zone study looking at, there's actually 14 crossings in the southeast part of Lincoln and at the time into Lancaster County. We had a diagnostic review with a group of the railroads, the city, county, OPPD, NDOT, and ourselves. That was in May of 2022. There's observations and recommendations from that meeting that were then incorporated into a final report that we submitted in an executive summary in September of 2023 to the RTSD. Since then, we've had a few amendments, and one of the findings in that report was that we should investigate traffic signal preemption. So there's a number of intersections that are adjacent to crossings along Nebraska Parkway. And so the BNSF representatives indicated that they felt like there needed to be a study of that preemption. Currently, there is preemption at those crossings, but it's not of the type that BNSF would require of a new setup. And so they wanted that to be studied. That would require a third-party agreement with them and the RTSD at a cost of approximately $50,000. We took the position that is not a requirement of a quiet zone, and that BNSF can require that for us to move forward. And so we submitted that to the Federal Railroad Administration for their review. Haven't had a official response from FRA, but they did indicate preliminarily that they agreed with RTSD in our position that they can't require signal preemption study as part of a quiet zone. So, generally we're on hold at this point. I think I was at your September board meeting and presented some findings. So just from a budget status, we've got about $27,000 left in our contract, which expires on June 30th of this year. As I mentioned, we've amended that a couple different times just because of the ongoing review comments and things that we're getting from both BNSF and the FRA. So Can give a few updates. So since we submitted our report, the 70th Street crossing has been annexed from Lancaster County into the city of Lincoln. So Lancaster County is no longer officially part of the project. It's all in the city of Lincoln now. We did provide cost estimates for about $4 million for improvements at the 12 crossings on the quiet zone. Again, we were under contract to do an implementation plan that would look and see if, there's various improvements and costs at the different crossings. And so we were going to put together some recommendations on what, kind of what you should do first, a little bit of a phase implementation plan. But again, we're holding until we get this determination from the FRA. And then, since then, there's the grain elevator at the Calvert Street crossing. It was purchased by Farmers Co-op of Dorchester, and the previous owners had indicated they would like to do a safety improvement project there and install active warning devices, so your gate arms and lights and bells. Farmers Co-op indicated they don't have the interest in going forward with that project at this time. So we had removed that crossing from the study, and we would still propose that crossing is removed, that that's no longer part of the quiet zone. So that's kind of an update. I can answer questions if you have them. I think Roger had a request for some direction. We had a few items at the end of this outline here.
Thank you, Mark. We're kind of at a point, obviously, I was encouraged when I did receive a phone call from FRA last week. I had been trying for months to get a response. They've had change in staff, and there's actually a new representative for this part of the country. And I still need to make direct contact with him and communicate and receive something from FRA that we can then send to BNSF, indicating that that additional preemption study isn't a requirement and that we would like to finish the study. Or to finish the study, we need them to go ahead and provide us with cost estimates, because as Mark said, our estimate's around $4 million. I'm assured that by the time we get the actual estimates back from the railroad, they would be significantly higher than that. I'm not convinced that the railroad would be timely or responsive in still giving us the estimates. Just because FRA says that isn't required, we would still be depending on BNSF to respond. They may or they may not at this point. So we're kind of at a point of thinking about what we might do in the future. So wanting to give you this update today and be thinking about options and whatnot, and maybe be in a position at the June meeting, which is early in June. This contract, as Mark said, expires at the end of this fiscal year, which would be June 30. Some options and things to think about, continuing to try to work with the railroad. I think it's incumbent for us to have accurate numbers for the board and taxpayers to know before you would try to make a decision to move ahead or not move ahead. You could let the contract expire and the work that's been done isn't lost. It's there. The reports and the documentation belong to the RTSD, as we have contracted with FHU. Could be picked up later on. In June, you could choose to terminate the contract with FHU. You could just give us direction for me to kind of put them on hold or let the contract expire. But I would continue to work with FRA and the railroad to try to get information and answers. And if they finally do respond, then we could consider revisiting with FHU. Time is money. As Mark said, I think the board executed a contract in 2021. It took us a year to get everybody together just to do the diagnostic. The agreement with OPPD and BNSF was onerous and long and difficult, but we did get to that point, and as FHU has been very, very respectful of the dollars in that contract and not charging time as we wait, even some minor interactions. They have been very respectful of that money. But, at this point, we have spent in the neighborhood of nearly $150,000 thus far, and we don't really have enough data to move ahead. So I think at this point, we're certainly not asking for direction, certainly would entertain or appreciate any conversation or discussion you guys want to have about the project and process. Then with the idea that in June we should have some more information by then. I'm not sure I'm comfortable in asking FHU to continue to work on an implementation plan if we're not sure we're going to hear back from the railroad or BNSF. So, my thoughts would be I hate to burn more of their dollars between now and June. We could just ask them to continue to hold in that time frame. But certainly would answer questions and turn it over for discussion from the board. Again, not a decision today, but information so that you can help make your decision of what you might want to do in June or thereafter.
We're just capturing what you told us, you gentlemen told us. The railroad has requested an additional study that would cost another $50,000. We didn't believe it was required under the federal statutes. The FRA has agreed with us, but there's no legal action that says now BNSF must respond. There's no time frames or anything like that. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of. BNSF has made it clear across the country they're not a supporter of quiet zones.
Right.
They don't see the advantage of additional safety, and therefore they aren't overly anxious to hurry and hustle and get information here. I think that if we were at a point where we'd agreed upon the equipment, and we had an agreement with the railroad, FRA's rule stands saying you can't ask them to do that, but we haven't even gotten estimates or started an agreement. The railroad would be the one that would have to install the improvements for the quiet zone, and the city, or the RTSD, the city would hire a contractor. To move ahead, there would need to be another three-party agreement between the RTSD, the city, which is the road authority, and the railroad to pay them for those improvements, and for the city to agree to the necessary improvements and then maintaining and operating those improvements in the future.
I think that what we ought to do is just hold until June, and then hopefully we'll have more information that comes back, and then perhaps we can get into a full-blown decision as to what the next steps might be.
I'm totally fine with that, but I just want to make sure I clear that. I'm very supportive of moving forward with the quiet zone in Lincoln, in South Lincoln, because I think it does improve the crossing. It improves the crossings for the safety, like you referred to, Mr. Feigard, and so definitely want to keep this as a priority for RTSD.
Well, I think the choices, really, Roger, there aren't a lot of choices. We've done everything we can do at this point.
I'm hoping perhaps that FRA can provide some additional guidance for some better interaction with BNSF. I have a pretty good relationship with several of those folks, and hopefully they will respond and give us some information so that you have accurate details and dollars to make a decision.
Okay. Well,
we'll
And
just
I can
wait.
work diligently on that, and we'll ask FHU to continue to hang and hold in that time frame.
right. And I guess then the question that comes up is, if the contract, if we get to this point, and we'll meet again before June 30th, if the contract expires, what are the ramifications of that? If eventually BNSF does come back with information, then do we write another contract, or?
Yes, I think the RTSD is generally following in our legal counsel. I don't want to speak for him, but once the contract or an agreement has expired, you're really not legally allowed to extend them after the fact. So we'd need to go through another, or if in that time frame thinking about something had happened, whether or not we'd have some type of a potential amendment prepared, a draft amendment at the June meeting. If we had information to move ahead, the board could consider that. But we can always do another agreement with FHU.
Okay.
You would-
Whether it's an expired agreement and the parties wish to rekindle the relationship, it's subject to a new agreement. Whether they wish to amend it and extend it prior to its expiration, it's still subject to each party's agreement. We're both going to have to agree. Presumably, FHU would continue to want that relationship, but that's their prerogative as well. So yes, it's going to be subject to both parties' agreement.
I think we would continue to support the RTSD, and we would be willing to extend the agreement or do a new one.
Appreciate that. Well,
And we've extended it in the past, so if that's a possibility, I'll be talking with Roger about, and we could come prepared at the June meeting with perhaps an amendment or to extend it if necessary.
so when Roger hears more, we'll know more, right? When you hear more from the FRA or the BNSF? you'll share
Absolutely,
that.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item C, Roger, miscellaneous other railroad work.
The city continues to work on a contract with a private contractor, but they do have a signed agreement with the Union Pacific Railroad to remove 4 tracks at 3 crossings in northeast Lincoln on Northwest 12th. The city's working to get a private contract out and get those removed. We would, under one of our other proposals, the city then would be asking for reimbursement for the removal of those tracks. So that's ongoing. I don't have much else that I'm aware of with BNSF. We do have a representative from Lincoln Parks and Recreation here today, Allison Spiker. I'll ask her to come forward. They have been working on a couple of projects that involve the railroads. And why don't you just feel free to come right over here
Great.
and you can play with this as much as you want. She's here to talk about those 2 projects, and then we'll talk a little bit about funding.
Can they see what's on the screen?
Well, they should. Can you folks in the back?
There you can. Oh, fantastic.
There we go.
Okay. As Roger said, I'm Allison Spiker. I'm with Lincoln Parks and Recreation, and I am their Trails and Natural Resources Coordinator. I'm bringing to you today 2 trail projects that are coming into construction in the upcoming years, with a request that the RTSD board consider funding support for the rail portions of those projects. The first is the Beal Slough Trail project, and the next is associated with the downtown Haymarket Park and the Chris Beitler Trail project. So the Beal Slough Trail project, if you could see, I'll just give a really quick overview. It is a 2.2 mile trail section that will be expanding our trail network, starting half a mile south of Nebraska Parkway and on 56th Street. So it's what you see in red is new trail. It goes through the Beal Slough Greenway and follows the Beal Slough. There's a 0.2 mile section that's already been constructed, which is what's shown in green, that crosses under 2 tunnels. And there's an existing at-grade crossing of the OPPD rail line on Pine Lake that was constructed in 2019 with the widening of Pine Lake. It goes south from this point on the east side of the rail track into Jonathan Gap Park. And right there, you can see it crosses an undercrossing of an existing railroad bridge, OPPD railroad bridge, and then continues on the west side of 70th to Yankee Hill Road. We are in the final design stages, and we are coordinating with OPPD about that undercrossing and what project elements would be included. But I'll show you the specific request for support is related to the undercrossing only. This is a photo of the undercrossing location of where the existing bridge is, milepost 5429. And then I'll quickly just show you, there's a plan view, so an overhead view of the rail lines and the trail crossing with the Beal Slough right adjacent to the trail. And here's a cross section showing the trail under the structure. So we are working with OPPD on all of what design considerations they need to see and what elements would be included, but at a minimum we know that it would be the trail surface, retaining walls needed to support the trail, temporary shoring if needed, lighting, and a protective covering that would go over the trail. So with Roger's help, our proposal would be to bring that request for funding for this upcoming fiscal year. Our target is to get to construction of this trail in the next construction season in 2025, and would include the project elements related to the undercrossing in that request. Our preliminary estimate for that is $185,000. And that would be facilitated through an interlocal agreement. Am I right about that? An interlocal agreement between the city and the RTSD in June with the request for inclusion in the upcoming fiscal year.
I just
Did
love
you say-
bike trails. I think they're great, and everything we do adds to the quality of life for young people who can still ride bikes. But we've supported these projects in the past, but Commissioner Schulte, go ahead.
Yeah, you said construction be 2025 or the next construction season?
We are hoping for 2025.
Okay.
It's right now we're working through design considerations, and we're going to be tight to meet that, but that's our goal.
So I'm the executive director of Campus Life where that path goes through. I guess I was under the understanding that construction was going to begin this year, but that's why I ask for the bike path. But you're saying it's another year for the whole path?
That's correct.
For the whole path, okay, yeah.
Yeah, part of the considerations for that are making sure that we have all the design elements needed for OPP to be comfortable with their design. And then there are environmental constraints like tree clearing requirements and all of that. So there's a couple of pieces at play there, but yes, next year would be when we would be hoping to start construction.
Any other questions for Aaron or Allison? And I did send you all an email with these attachments on them, so that you'll have those if you want to refer to them.
Yeah. So I think it was just briefly mentioned, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but it's a federal aid project. So the city's portion is a 20% match. The total project cost is close to $2.3 million. So the city's portion of that is under $500,000. I think it's $460,000. And so the request is an element of the city's portion.
Okay. Yeah, Roger, you could address this better than we've partnered for railroad crossings on trail systems before. I know we have, I just don't recall.
Yeah, the most recent one would be with the NRD along the east bank of Salt Creek, just on the east edge of Hobson Yard. The trail goes underneath there and then goes on down to Jamaica. It's been a very consistent support for trail activity at the crossings, and from my perspective, the added safety of being able to do an undercrossing or an overpass for pedestrians and bikes is much better than having to deal with an at-grade crossing. We've even paid for some at-grade crossings as well, but yes, very consistent with what we've done in the past.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so the question will be, when we come back for a budget hearing, is this something that the board wants to include in our next budget? Is that what?
Yeah, if I'm seeing some nodding of heads, what I would tell you is at the June meeting, we would add a project and budget, proposed budget. I think Allison's saying they're expecting some additional updated estimates before too long. Estimates rarely go down, they probably go up. And so we try to have what we think is a reasonable cost estimate for the railroad portion of that trail and put that in the budget. Along with that would be, I need to confer with Mr. Kulik, but typically what we've done in the past is there'd be an interlocal agreement then that would come with that between the city and the RTSD to provide that funding at the point in time. If they bid the project in December of this year and we have proof and they get ready to start, they could be starting and invoice the city based on that construction contract in early '25, so we could pay them before the end of the next fiscal year. That's why I think it makes sense, if the board's interested, to put that in the budget. If there was a delay, we simply would move that money to the next fiscal year and renew the interlocal agreement for the next year as well.
And so this is something we'll take action on in June.
Something you take action on in June, if the board kind of nods your head and tell me to bring something back to the board for your consideration.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Any other questions?
Okay, I've got another project, so
Oh,
do you want me to
okay.
go? Yeah.
Yeah, might as well.
More. All right, here we go. So the second project is a project of my colleagues, but I'm here kind of talking about the trail portion of it. It's the South Haymarket Park, the downtown. I don't know if I can zoom out. Yeah, great. So the South Haymarket Park is a downtown park west of J Street, south of N Street. It's in design development phases right now with anticipated construction starting next year as well. Part of that project is a gap connection of our trail system. So the N Street cycle track is on the north end, Pinnacle Arena Drive Trail also on the northwest corner, and then the Jamaica North Trail terminates, you can see in blue on the bottom of the screen, at 4th Street on J. And so part of this project will be the Chris Beitler Trail, which will be located primarily within the park, but needs to make the connection all the way down to Jamaica North. It's early enough in the phase that routes are still being considered for where that connection, where that route will go. But at a minimum, we know that there are rail crossings. At a minimum, we know there's one rail crossing on J Street on the western end that will need to be crossed. And so there are 3 locations with 4 sets of tracks along J Street between 4th and 6th, which are the yellow that I've shown there. The Lincoln Bike Plan, in addition, calls for on-street facilities to connect from 4th on the west all the way to 9th Street. So for this project, we know that there's an opportunity or a need really to consider a safe crossing across the westernmost crossing. And as the design develops and coordination is done with the rail owners and operators, we would be proposing to bring surface improvements along J Street to the RTSD for consideration in the upcoming fiscal year.
In 25?
Yes. Also in 25.
Do you have cost estimates on this one?
It's pretty preliminary, and so it would depend on how many crossings we were talking about and what the requirements of the rail. So we would, I think, have that information for you certainly by June. It's early enough that we don't know what those would be.
The other thing I would add is we have some history of working with the industry down there along J Street. There's been some change of ownership. A goal for the RTSD has been to perhaps remove or eliminate some of those spur tracks, that then there wouldn't be a conflict with the trail. That's ongoing, and we would continue to work on that as Parks gets a final alignment in there and could come back with that work may not be in the next fiscal year. Certainly, we're just not sure. But rather than bring you a project at the last minute, the goal is to say this is another project that Parks is working on that certainly has interaction with the RTSD and railroad tracks, and there may be a need and a request in the future for funding support.
Any questions about that project? All right, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Allison. Item number 12, report of other matters, if any.
No, I don't have anything else that has been brought to my attention to bring to you today.
13 is communications or correspondence. Okay. Item number 14, is there any non-agenda items or anyone here from the public who would like to make a comment? Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, good morning. Now, would you like him to sign in on the sheet that's provided there? Does that help you, Mary?
Okay.
Yeah, if you would sign in, sir, and then state your name. We ask that folks limit their comments to 5 minutes.
Oh, I will be lower than, or less than that.
Oh, we like you better already.
My name's Andrew Faust. I'm here representing Smart TD. I'm a rail labor union here in Nebraska. I'm also here as a concerned citizen of Lincoln. My address is 8351 Emery Lane. It's in southeast Lincoln. I got a couple things. First off, I'd like to thank the board for giving $1,000 to Operation Lifesaver. I'm a second-generation railroader. My father did a lot of those school presentations, and that is a really, really good thing. I've been part of it for a while, too. I've attended numerous meetings and try to get the safety of the citizens of Nebraska, get that message out there. Thank you very much for doing that. In September 8th of 2020, the RTSD had a meeting with BNSF, specifically Jeff Davis. He's their government affairs officer. And he was talking about the BNSF taking over the contract for OPPD and running along to Nebraska City. In that, he said that trains cannot run on schedule. There is one train a day. Before I did this, I worked for the railroad for 19 years, right over here in Lincoln Yard, and that train can be on a schedule. They can hold that train to a specific time, and it can only travel, say, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. My complaint about this is there has never been a mechanical failure, a derailment coming back from the plant. It's always been going to the plant. And because of that is because of there's a grade going from probably a little bit before 70th Street all the way up to 96th Street or 91st Street. That's a hill. And a lot of times they've stalled out and blocked those crossings for up to 6 hours before. Ever since that train's been running down the Nebraska City line, they've had actually 6 incidences that were over 2 hours long. So they were blocking crossings from 91st Street to 70th Street, where they lost air to set brakes on the train, preventing it from rolling backwards. So at one point in time, the train stalled out on the hill and continued to roll backwards. The conductor had to dismount the engine and tie 48 handbrakes to stop it from rolling backwards. That's how big of grade it is. When they specifically, I live right by 70th Street crossing, and specifically when that crossing is blocked for a long period of time, even the amount of time that it takes for the train to go over the crossing, that if it's done during rush hour times like 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or in the morning from 7 a.m. to about 9 a.m., where there's 3 schools south of those crossings, the stopped traffic is all the way back into a roundabout. So even if the person wanted to go around, turn around, which is almost impossible because of the streets are so narrow when then there's a drop off the shoulder, it's almost impossible to traverse to get your kid to school, even if you're traveling down Yankee Hill going to 84th Street where the Moore Middle School is. I don't know, you'd have to go back to 56, go down to Saltillo, and come back and around, and that's if you could turn around. So after reading that watching the video with Jeff Davis, Roger said about this RTSD informational sheet on the website, and it says they are reviewing opportunities for ideal train travel times to traverse through Lincoln and Lancaster County to minimize traffic congestions. My question is, how did BNSF take that? I mean, where's this study, and is it continuing? I don't know. They just stated that on the website. I'm going to quote Jeff Davis when he said, "We live here, we work here, and we want to be good neighbors." You're still running a plan that's, what, 2 years old about quiet zones? And then we're waiting on the BNSF to get back to us, and we've spent $150,000 on this. I mean, they're not being good neighbors, and that's what was explained to us during the hearing or the informational meeting with BNSF. We need to get on top of this. The quiet zones, I'm willing. I work with the FRA. I personally know Amit Bose. So if we need any information from the FRA, please reach out to me, and I'll reach out to the proper people, and I'll get that information for us. I'm a taxpayer, and $150,000 is a lot of money that could be spent somewhere else in this city and in this county. We need to move. Like, that's my concern as a citizen. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I got a question. So, if I'm hearing correctly, I'm kind of hearing you say two big concerns. I just want to be very clear for the record. One would be related to the quiet zones and where they should all be at, but then also the schedule of the trains that BNSF are running through South Lincoln.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I kind of went all
No,
over.
no,
I'm trying
yeah.
to make 5 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. Is there any other concerns that outside of those two that I didn't pick up on based on what you said?
No,
No,
that's
okay.
that's pretty much.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the concerns I have.
Cool.
I know Councilman Dugan.
Duden.
I know he has complaints. I know Senator Carolyn Bozen is District 25. I know she has complaints. I talk to her all the time about it. I mean, every single time they block that, there's kids not getting to school. And I understand first responders, there's other routes for first responders, but they're going way out of their way. If you're blocking 84th Street, you got a fire station right north of 84th Street. So these trains they stated that they were going to be 7,800 feet long, right? So that's 1.477 miles. If you do that on Google Maps and take it and put it here and put it there, they could block in between 84th, 70th, and Pine Lake. And you have a fire station right there between 70th and Pine Lake. So then the next fire station, if you're blocking 84th, the 84th one north of that can't get there. Then you'd have to go to 27th Street and Old Cheney, and they'd have to come come down to 27th, down Yankee Hill. I mean, I don't know, 5-6 miles out of their way. So that's my concerns. That's as a citizen. My organization has the same concerns.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Faust.
Thank you.
One quick question. What was your father's first name?
John Faust. Yeah.
I guess.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
I'm sorry. Don't hold it against me.
No conclusions drawn, my friend. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to
I
adjourn.
move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Amundson, second by Schulte to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson,
Absent.
He left.
Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
and.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.